Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Outdoors with Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone, and you can find me on my website at hikingbob.com, which has links to my social media, my column at the Colorado Springs Independent, and also and I have a new one coming out. October's about here, so I'll have a new column coming out probably in a couple of days with things to do in October. And the list of things to do in October for outdoor recreation is pretty big. So that's coming up here really soon. So that, my photography website, all the other podcasts we've done, all that good stuff, and including how to contact me and how to support the podcast. If you like to do that by signing up as a patron at Patreon, patreon.com/hikingbob, you can help support this podcast and help pay the bills, which we'd always appreciate. Kevin and I would appreciate you guys doing that. Me especially, because I don't ask Kevin to pay for the stuff. That's not fair. He's got to be here and he does this for free, and then I'm not going to ask him to pay for that. In any case, you can do all this stuff patreon.com and hikingbob.com. As you heard, joining me today is my co-host Wild Westendorf.
Hey everyone, it's Kevin Wild Westendorf here, and you can find me on social media, primarily Facebook and Instagram at Wild Westendorf, and on my website, which is wildwestendorf.wordpress.com.
Well, Kevin, last week we talked a little bit about people supporting the City Parks Department with the budget talks coming up, and there's going to be some cuts across the board with that. And I asked people to contact their local counselor, they'll contact the mayor's office, contact the counselors at large, and ask them that if there's going to be pay cuts, if there's going to be budget cuts to the departments, to at the very least make them equal across the board. And we're still early in that process. The budget hasn't even been completed yet. And what happens is the mayor actually writes the budget, then he gives it to city council, because council is actually the people who have the duty of appropriating money and passing a budget and everything. And of course, it goes back and forth, and the council might make changes to it. And of course, they consult with the mayor and they listen to the public. But nonetheless, I wanted to get ahead of things a little bit, because I think once that the budget is presented, then like anything else that's put in paper, it's hard to change it, if that makes any kind of sense. So what I did was I went to city council on Tuesday and spoke in front of them. I just used my 3 minutes in the topics not on the agenda, because the budget's not on the agenda yet, and just asked council two things. I said, if you're going to try not to make any cuts, but if you have to, make them fair and equal across the board, and not do like we did. And it's been 15 years, Kevin, since the Great Recession. And for those of you who remember, who were here, and a lot of people listen to this either are not from Colorado Springs, but you're probably facing similar things in your community. But if people were here 15 years ago, remember that during the Great Recession, there were serious cuts that had to be made across the board. There was a lot less income coming into the city in the way of property taxes, values went down, and sales tax revenue dropped off. Unfortunately, at that time, the powers to be in government at the time, and it's none of the people that are there now because of term limits and things like that, made drastic cuts to the Parks Department budget. I mean, huge cuts, and not so much other departments. And what happened was 15 years later, our funding at the Parks Department is still not where it was prior to the Great Recession, which is unconscionable. There's no reason for that. And the only people to blame for that are the people who have been in power since then. Now, not necessarily the people in power now, because like I said, none of them were here at the time. We have term limits that prevent people from being in office for 15, 16, 17 years or whatever. But even the people who are in power between now and then, and I shouldn't say they haven't increased the budget at all. They have, but we're still 15 years behind. And what I'm trying to avoid, and what we all should be trying to avoid, is unequal cuts to any department and putting the Parks Department further and further back. So long story short, put the pressure on your city councilors. You can go to coloradosprings.gov, click on city council. There's actually one email address. You can click on there that goes to all the city council people all at the same time. You don't have to look up a bunch of individual email addresses. And just ask them that if you can avoid making cuts, please. And if you have to make cuts, make them equal across the board, and try not to spare other departments at the detriment of the Parks Department. And I get it. I explained today, I didn't explain, but as I mentioned today in front of council, when I did that, was that you're going to hear from every single special interest group that doesn't want their thing cut or their pet department cut or their pet project cut or whatever. They put themselves in office. They ran for office to make these tough decisions, which I completely understand. But on the other half, we have to just, my thing was make it equal and don't kill, one group, one department to save somebody else. They're not looking at, and I should be clear, they're not looking at cuts to the level they were during the Great Recession when the cuts were huge and very deep. They're looking at, from what I've heard, a little over 3%, I think 3.4%, something like that. The last thing I heard. Now, sales tax revenue may go up between now and the end of the year, and the cuts may not have to be so much. But in any case, they're not looking at 10, 20, 30% cuts like we've had before. They're looking at 3%. I think any department with a little bit of self introspection could probably can probably make 3% cuts and not kill themselves. So in any case, just a word for those of you listening in Colorado Springs, now's the time to talk to your city council people and get in front of them and get this in front of them. So, you need to just make sure they're aware that we really value our parks departments and that kind of stuff. Kevin, the big thing right now is it's fall. The first day of fall was over the weekend, and it's fall, but you can't tell by the weather. It was in the 80s today, and I think it's going to be in the 80s through the rest of the week. And that's kind of weird weather. And even after that, it's going to be in the 70s, I think, next week. But it is fall, officially on the calendar, according to the meteorologist, the Farmer's Almanac, and anybody else you can care to ask. It actually is fall. And it come with that, of course, all across the country comes the fall colors, and especially here in Colorado. So this past weekend, I was up in Salida, Colorado, actually down west, about 102 miles from here. In Salida, and near there, of course, is the collegiate peaks, Harvard, Yale, Columbia, whichever, and I don't remember all the names of them. There's like 6 peaks, I think, named after colleges. Princeton, of course, one of the big ones over there.
Oh, yeah.
Mount Princeton, and it's a side note, very recognizable because it's a big peak with 2 shoulders. It's a pretty cool one that you can spot that one from a ways off. And I was up on Monarch Pass, which goes over, it crosses at about 11.5, I believe, and goes over into the towns of Gunnison and on the western slope. But the fall colors were just getting started there. A little, not as far along as I'd expected, but as we've discussed, and there's been a lot of talk on news media and stuff, it seems like the fall colors are running about a week or so behind the norm or the average. So long story short, for those of you listening in Colorado and in the Front Range area, and you're looking for where to go, I think this coming weekend, a couple of days after this podcast goes out, will probably be really good along Monarch Pass, the Collegiate Range, places like Salida, Buena Vista, those places there, Leadville, up towards Twin Lakes, should be really looking good this coming weekend. Maybe not at peak, but if you wait another week, you might just miss it. So I would suggest if you're looking for a place to go this coming weekend, this week, and that'd be the first weekend in October, would be the Collegiate Peak area, Salida, Buena Vista, that area. I think that's going to look really good. And further north, I myself will be heading up on Friday. My plans are to head up a little further north there along Guanella Pass, Kenosha Pass, Staunton State Park. Sent out a post on Facebook that they were just starting to see colors on their western side. Mueller State Park, a little closer to here, and one of my favorite close-in places to Colorado Springs to see fall colors, reported that they're not really seeing much yet. I think they're going to be a week or two later. They may have some this coming weekend. The first weekend in October probably look a little better the second weekend in October. And of course, all this is variable. There were pockets of color everywhere that you could see, but you would see a pocket of yellow and a sea of green. So, if you want to do like I do, I like doing the nice intimate close-up pictures. You could find those. But if you like the big broad pictures, which I like to do also, those are still a little ways off, but they're coming. And the key to thing to remember is, if you think things are peak or near peak, that's the time to go. If you drag your feet, and Kevin, you've probably seen this, these colors last mere days.
Oh, yeah,
and then they're gone. And so you want to get up there and see those when you think you're good. And if you have to pick an early weekend as opposed to a weekend a week later, take the early one, because if it's close to peak, then following weekend may be too late to go see that. Um, and Kevin, on Tuesday, I was up on the Seven Bridges Trail, very popular trail, as you and I have both hiked, and everybody around here has probably hiked a bazillion times. It's very popular, very beautiful, and that's just outside of North Cheyenne Canyon Park. And North Cheyenne Canyon is not a place to see aspen, like we said. Down here in Colorado Springs, we're too low in elevation. The aspens don't live here; they live a little further up. But what's neat about North Cheyenne Canyon Park is there's all kinds of other vegetation. There's some
Oh
poplars,
yeah.
and there's some um, uh, other trees, some oaks and stuff like that, even some maples that grow in there. And it is very colorful driving up the road through North Cheyenne Canyon Park, especially the low, like they call it, ground cover along the side of the road is very bright red. So there's a lot of color to see. It's not the aspens, but it is a lot of color to see in North Cheyenne Canyon Park. And I think you're going to see that extend up. And I always like shooting that kind of stuff. It's usually the closer up shots you do because there's roads and stuff in there, but it's still um, pretty cool to see that. So things are changing, and I think we're still going to have a pretty robust season. I'm going to talk a little bit here about a hike I did where it was extremely windy, and why what I saw there was important to the fall colors too.
I I I will say though, if you hike past the Seven Bridge, and it turns into a workout of a hike after that. But you go a couple miles, a mile and a half, maybe I think, and you will end up in a area called Jones Park. Just a huge aspen grove. I mean, it's huge, and so if you really want to see it close to town, that's a good spot for it. Plus, there's a lot of history up there. You'll find a lot of remains of a settlement up there, which at the time they were trying to make that like the next Manitou Springs. And then obviously the mining industry collapsed and it became a ghost town. But it's a gorgeous area though for the aspen trees.
The fact that trying to make a road go up there was pretty difficult because it's pretty high up
Yeah.
there. You're right. When you take that trail and you get near the pipeline trail, I believe it is,
Yeah.
there is a huge grove of aspen up there, and they're beautiful. And I haven't been up there in a couple of years, but they are gorgeous. So you are correct. If you want to hike to a place and don't want to drive, 2 hours and then go hiking, the Seven Bridges Trail, and that is actually a good suggestion. They're really nice. So on the Seven Bridges Trail today, we saw a lot of color of all these different, whatever they are. My ignorance of all the different trees is fully evident right now. I should know this stuff better than I do. But in any case, there was plenty to see of different colors, and and the nice thing about the stuff that's closer here in the town is that it persists a little longer than the aspens do. The aspens turn gold, and then within days, they're pretty much done for the season. So that's pretty cool. And in a couple of weeks, I'm going back to the East Coast, and I'm going to shoot, hopefully, fingers crossed, many, many more colors instead of just gold. And I love the gold here in our aspens, but I like the reds and blues and purples and greens and yellows and oranges that you see on the East Coast, where there's all these different trees, maples and oaks and all these other trees that bloom out that turn colors out there. So I can't wait to see that. If my timing is good, I'll get to do both. I'll get to get plenty of pictures here and then see a lot of colors there. So
I am very, very jealous.
I was looking at some pictures from a few years ago. It was right before COVID hit that we were at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York in October. That's central New York. And it was late in October, so a little past peak there, but still the pictures I got of the colors there were to die for. They were just tremendous. So I really have my fingers crossed that I'm going to see. I won't be that far north because I'm going to be a little late for that again. I'll be further south, like southeastern Pennsylvania, maybe northern Virginia, Maryland. But I think the pictures I'm going to get in a little further south are just going to be just as fantastic. So fingers crossed. So on my trip, Kevin, I went and did, we went and spent a couple of days in Salida. And if you haven't been there, Salida's got a pretty cool vibe. And you and I talked about it when we talked last week that I was going to, the last podcast, I was going to be heading up there. Salida's got a pretty cool vibe. Nice little town, about 5,000-ish people, I think. kind of a crossroads town. US Highway 50 goes through there along with, and then US 285 cuts through there. So it's kind of a crossroads
Oh,
town.
that's right.
50 continues up and over Monarch Pass, which is a beautiful pass, and the ski resort up there. And I was looking at a couple of hikes I want to do. So I did 2 hikes in the days I was there. One of them, which was to a place called Water Dog Lakes. And that's a pretty easy hike. I think maybe it was 3-ish miles round trip, not very far. Really a fun little hike. I really enjoyed it. And it goes to a couple of lakes. The trail technically ends at the first lake that you run into up there. But in actuality, there's a lake up above that. Let's see, Water Dog Lakes was 3.37 miles round trip. I just pulled up my database. And a nice little hike, but what was really pretty about that one, the lake was pretty cool. But we only went to the first lake because, having one car and being dropped off and having somebody pick you up and not having any cell phone communications, I needed to be back to the trailhead at a time that I had specified to be picked up, or, things would get a little, then there would be concern about why was I late. Nonetheless, I want to go back there in the summer and do all the lakes that are up there that are all, there's a cluster of them up there. But along that trail going up there, then the first few hundred feet of it, there's a creek that comes out of the lakes, runs down and comes down and goes underneath the highway. And just within a few hundred feet, there was a couple of spots where the stream was cascading over rocks. And it was perfect lighting conditions. It was deep shade, which you want when you take these pictures. But I got these beautiful pictures of this lake, or these cascades going over rocks and everything, and a little hint of the fall colors. Anyway, beautiful hike. I really enjoyed it. The trick to this is that there's a marker for it. There's a sign that says Water Dog Lake Trailhead that is almost impossible to see from the road. And there's no marker for it. There's parking on the opposite side of the road. It's not marked as being for Water Dog Lakes. And the only way I found it was using the good old trusty Cotrax app, because it'll track your movement. So I had it on while we were driving up the road, and it was tracking me going up Highway 50. And then it came to a spot where it said, there's Water Dog Lakes. So we kind of blew by it, turned around and went back and parked where the map said we were, and Water Dog Lakes was right across the street. And sure enough, if you look really closely across the road, about 30 feet in from the road, in deep, deep shade, is a sign that said Water Dog Lakes Trailhead. You've really got to know where there's no marker on the road whatsoever telling you that's where it is. The hint was the cars parked on the side of the road. Why are they parked there? There's nothing else there. But there it was. And really a really nice hike. Easy, not a difficult hike at all. Cole and I went up there, had a great time, and did that one. So a couple of days later, I did another hike, and I had been plotting out this one, and the Continental Divide and the Colorado Trail and another trail called the Monarch Crest Trail, they don't all merge here, but you can access them all. They're all the same trail, but they are all in the same spot, and they cross over Monarch Pass. And there's the Monarch Pass, now, which is the paved road that goes up and over. Nice, beautiful road. And then right before there's the old Monarch Pass Road, which is a dirt road, easily drivable in anything. Somebody noted on my Facebook post that they were wondering what the road was like because they were up there not too long ago. It was in pretty bad shape. It must have been regraded because it was a wonder to drive. It was beautiful for a dirt road, smooth, not a lot of ruts or no erosion or anything. Anyway, the trails cross the old Monarch Pass Road near the top of the old Monarch Pass road, which is about 50 feet higher than the other one. Side note. So anyway, from there, I got on the Continental Divide Trail, and I'd plotted this out before. And the trails go through the Monarch ski area. So you're actually on this big, wide dirt road that goes through the Monarch ski areas, and the lifts come up there. And there are signs, 20 feet off the ground, because that's how high they have to be able to see them when all the snow is on the ground. You look at these signs above your head, basically, where, all the different ski slopes run off of there. You can see all of them. Take this, and you go through about a mile or and a half, maybe 2. I think it might be close to 2 miles through the Monarch ski area. Then the trail comes off of there, and then it becomes just a little single track trail. And you're pretty much above tree line for a while. Anyway, I hiked this trail for about 8 miles, and then it dropped down right past the Water Dog Lakes. And before there was a spot where you're basically looking right down on the lakes. And beautiful picture. I got a picture of all this cluster of lakes up there. None of them are really big. And hiked down past them. And then basically after about 9 miles, 9.5 miles, I turned down a Forest Service road and went back to the little town of Garfield, which is a blip as you're going up Monarch Pass Road. And the Continental Divide Trail goes one way. I went the other way down to the road. And so at about 11.5 mile hike, the smart thing I did, sometimes I don't do very many smart things, was I did this from the top going down. So I started at the high point, did it. If you're looking at it, it was kind of like a C shape. It's not a closed loop. And it was dropped off at one point, picked up another by my wife and Cole. And going that way made the most sense because it's a minimal amount of elevation gain. If you do this going from Garfield up, you're going to say, well, that makes sense. You're going uphill. But trust me, the first couple of miles is a lot of uphill. It's not like it's an even thing. You do a lot of climbing in the first few miles. It is just a relentless uphill. It's not like it's kind of like gradual no matter which way you go, and it wouldn't matter. It doesn't work that way. So doing it clockwise as opposed to counterclockwise was really nice. But beautiful hike, beautiful lakes that you go by. One lake was kind of interesting, and I need to post a picture of this. It was like blue, like we expect with these high alpine lakes, and it was right at tree line. So, a little under 11,000, or right between 11 and 12,000 feet. But then in the middle of it was like a deep blue. It was almost like a lake within a lake, but it wasn't a very big lake, and you just almost like a big pond that was in there. So it was pretty neat to see. So anyway, that was a big 11.5 mile hike. Took me 6.5 hours altogether, a lot less than that, maybe 4.5 hours actual moving time. Because I stopped to take pictures and have lunch and things like that, all that kind of stuff. But it was really a nice hike. During that hike, it was super windy. I mean, really, really windy. Gale force, like really high winds, especially on the spine before I started to drop down. And two things about that. When I got to where I was looking down on the Water Dog Lakes, because I could see them down there, I wanted to get a little closer to the edge and really, just hang off of there and take a picture. Decided not to do that because I was really concerned I was going to get blown right off of that ledge. And probably go for a swim in Water Dog Lakes, which probably would not have been a good thing since A, I don't swim, and B, it was probably about 400 feet down to there. It was super windy. And so I would have probably taken longer if it wasn't so windy, because in one case it was like, I just got to keep moving to get out of this wind and get down below tree line, which took a while to do. Well, probably close to 9 miles before I got down below tree line. It was a ways down on this hike. But as a side note about wearing the right clothing, and you may have heard me talk about the Fall Raven clothing. They have a store here in Colorado Springs, and really great people who work there. I have several pairs of their pants. I bought a couple of pairs of their lighter weight pants to wear, and they're nice and stretchy, and they're good lightweight pants and really comfortable. But they, as it turned out on this hike, were very wind resistant because it was windy. I had to have a second layer on, long sleeve layer on my top, but I wore them as the pants on that and did not feel any wind through them at all. And I mean, it was gale force wind up there, really windy. Didn't feel them at all through these pants. So they really were really good about keeping the wind off of me, which probably kept me cool or kept me warm. And it wasn't very cold that day. It was probably 50 degrees, but the wind was just howling. Probably kept me from being really uncomfortable. And I wouldn't say I was really uncomfortable during this whole hike, just that I was obvious that the wind was really howling, and it was all I could do. Lost my hat once, and luckily was able to get it because I got stuck on a rock before it disappeared and ended up in Kansas or someplace. which probably would have happened if I didn't catch it. It'd have been litter in somebody's yard, or probably it would have been a picture of a moose with a hat on it, and it would have been mine if I didn't catch the hat. So in any case, the Fall Raven clothes, and I'm not, they're not a sponsor, except they're really good people and they treated me well. But they're not a sponsor. I'm just talking about, having, this is where good clothing made a difference. If you were wearing jeans, which are a bad idea for hiking anyway, uh, you would have felt the wind in there and probably been really more uncomfortable than I was when I was on this hike. Um, Kevin, I've been rattling on here. Any questions? I'm sure you probably got some questions about this hike or some thoughts on these two hikes I did. Have you hiked in it at all in this same area, these lakes, or
I actually have not. I've been wanting to because we used to have a route for the trucks at my work that would put them through the pass, and the drivers would always stop at certain times of the year and just take these amazing photos of the lakes. And so I'm like, I feel like it's just not a well-known area to hike because I think all the attention goes to the skiing and such, which I now know why the signs are so high. And it never dawned on me. It's like, that's why the signs are so high. It's because of the snow. Because I've seen that in other towns too. Um, yeah, that's it's on my list. I've driven through Monarch Pass a million times. It's a gorgeous drive. You're totally right, and I'm glad you mentioned a thing about Old Monarch Pass because I've seen the signs for it, but I just never knew if it's if it's a 4-wheel drive road or what. So
yeah, Old Monarch Pass Road was kind of fun. You could tell that when the colors are changing, they're going to be fantastic, and that would actually be the road to be on. Like I said, it's a dirt road, but it's drivable, at least when I was there, by anything. And I guess it will be, for the rest of the season. Really was a nice road. We took a nice ride. Didn't see anybody on there. You come out a couple of miles north of the current Monarch Pass, north of Highway 50, and then you make your way back. So we went over going west and then came back on the current Monarch Pass, the new Monarch Pass road going east, and really enjoyed it. That's our story. There are a lot of state wildlife areas near there that some have trails, some don't. Some are just for fishing or hiking or hunting. I'm sorry. So you need obviously to go to those places, you need a Colorado state fishing license or a hunting license or a state wildlife area pass. The Arkansas River runs through there. So it's the Arkansas River Headwaters Recreation Area cuts through there. It's a joint thing with BLM, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the U.S. Forest Service. CPW actually kind of manages it for everybody. We did stop at a couple of those places that, off of 285, you'll see signs for them. One of them had was a very tiny spot called Stone Bridge, and there's an old bridge that was created over the Arkansas River back in 1908. And I think I took some pictures there on sunrise the morning before we left. I'm still waiting to see how they look. It wasn't a great sunrise for pictures for people who kind of pay attention to that kind of stuff. But just an interesting thing. You can't drive across it, but there's some, it's a National Historic Landmark marker there, and then another marker that was put there when it was built in 1908. Kind of again, another thing, mostly interesting because of the history of it. But it is also where kayakers put in and anglers go to do their thing. And there's a number of those in there, quite a few state wildlife areas around there. So if you want to check out some of those, or if you're into fishing and hunting, there's a lot of those places around there. So I would suggest checking out. I think I want to go back there next summer and do some more of the trails there and explore some more of that. I've done a lot of stuff further north in Buena Vista, which is about 20 some odd miles north of there. I've done a lot of stuff there along Cottonwood Pass and the Chalk Cliffs area, but I hadn't done any that as much, this a little further south in Salida. Both are really cool towns. Buena Vista has a pretty cool vibe, and they're doing some pretty neat stuff there with I think you call it the North Main Street area, and there. I think you've seen that in a couple brew pubs there. So Buena Vista doing some nice stuff. Chaffee County as a whole doing some pretty interesting stuff with their outdoor recreation. And I think you could call it, they're trying to do responsible tourism and not just bringing people in and not having adequate resources for them. They're really doing a nice job there. So pretty cool stuff going on in that area.
And what's really cool about that is that I'm glad they're bringing more attention to the outdoor or to the variety of things to do in the valley. because I feel like for many, many years, a lot of people have ignored large parts of the valley because of all the 14ers, which I believe there are 12 total, like leading from Salida to Leadville. So yeah, it's really, really cool to see that they're trying to expand the knowledge of what to do there.
Yeah, I think they are, and there are. I don't know how many 14ers are. There's a bunch of them there. It's a very high concentration. You're exactly correct in there, and doing a lot of work there to bring in tourists. I like their approach. They're doing some pretty interesting things. I encourage people to go up there. If you're in the Colorado Springs or if you're in Colorado and you listen to this, you wanted to where to go to see fall colors, I would highly suggest the Buena Vista, Salida, Leadville area. I think even further north, Kenosha Pass, Guanella Pass are all looking good. Things are running a little behind. They're running a little longer. We have warm weather, which is kind of weird, and we have a lot of sun. And of course, what causes the leaves to change is lesser amounts of sun. Mostly by shorter hours of daylight. But it's going to be a great weekend coming up, so that's going to be nice. A side note: when I was up on these trails and the wind was just howling, when I got back down below tree line, what I did not see on the ground was a bunch of green leaves, which means the leaves are hanging onto the trees, which is an indication of how healthy they are, which means that they should hang on for us to have really good fall colors. We've seen in the past where the leaves, it wasn't a lot of water, and basically the amount of moisture they get is what makes the leaves hang onto the trees, what strengthens them. We've had a lot of moisture, good sign. They were able to withstand these high winds, another good sign. So as long as we don't get a deep freeze, which could kill the leaves and make everything die, which is not predicted anytime soon, I think that we're going to have a pretty good fall color season. So if you're
Oh yeah.
looking for places to go take pictures or go hike or just ooh and ahs, you're driving up a road, which there's nothing wrong with that, that I think you have plenty of time to do that. But when you see that leaves are changing, and I suggest looking at different Facebook pages and things like that, social media, when you see that things are changing, you need to get out there, because if you drag your feet, you could miss it. Because even with as healthy as they are, I don't think they're going to last. They don't last too long, and they're not going to last, very long. So when they're changing, get out there. If you miss it trust me, the pictures taken 3 days before peak and 3 days after peak are all great pictures anyway. Don't
Oh
worry
yeah,
about
yeah.
trying to nail. I've seen people try to nail it and miss everything. Don't do that. If you have the day off and leaves are turning, get out there and go see it, and just take advantage of the opportunities when you can. Kevin, you got any plans to do any leaf peeping coming up pretty soon?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try and do pancake rocks this weekend. I also have a friend who suggested plans. I don't remember what trail she had mentioned, but I might be doing that instead. She has a knack for finding insanely beautiful hikes to do that are also extremely easy and short. Like she just knows how to find that balance. And yeah, but yeah, I'm definitely gonna get out there. But from personal experience, if you want a nearby hike that's not too far from Mueller State Park, Pancake Rocks is a great one for the fall colors.
Not only is that a good spot, you're exactly correct, but I hiked up there about 10 days ago, and they were just finishing up some
That's
work
right.
on the Pancake Rocks Trail, including the section where you turn off from Horse Thief Park and start to go up there, that had some erosion, some steep sections, a couple more switchbacks to lengthen it just a little bit. But they really did some work. And then at the top, where you kind of go along the straight area, and there was a steep drop that you had to climb back out of, they routed around that. So if you want to go see some nice trail work that was just finished, I also suggest Pancake Rocks. This weekend, it was probably going to be okay. The following weekend might be a little better. But like I said, if this is the weekend you have to go, I would definitely go this weekend. I think you'll definitely see some color up there. Maybe not be widespread yet, but definitely will be some color. And then the bonus is if you get to go the following week, you get to see even more. And the other trail there, the Crags Trail, usually has some pretty nice color. And then my favorite trail, go past the Crags to the end of the road to the Putney Gulch Trail, which takes you to the Pancake Rocks Trail.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And through that whole area, through Horse Thief Park, there's a lot of color and far fewer hikers to see there, so a lot less traffic. There are moose up there. We've talked about this. There are moose up there. Keep your dog leashed, even though it may be legal to have your dog off leash. Right now is a bad time to have your dog off leash in that area, because there are wild, of course, they're wild. There are moose running, moose on the loose in that area, and you really need to be careful with your pets, because Moose do not like dogs. But in any case, that whole area there, that whole Highway 67 stretch, I think it's probably another week uh, to go before that really gets good. But if you go up this coming weekend, you'll see plenty of colors. I think you'll be treated pretty well to that. Do you have any other favorite places you like to go to for fall colors? Do you have a favorite place in this area that you like?
In this area, let's see, there's Pancake Rocks. I talked about Jones Park
Mm-hmm.
earlier. That's an amazing spot. Also, if you're looking for a drive, the driving on Rampart Range Road is a really nice drive. I've done that a couple times, and let's see, I'm trying to think of other trails, but it's hard to pick ones in this area because lower elevation of us. But I think my favorite hike that I've done that's a little bit of a drive away is the Helms Lake and Abyss Trail, which is right off of Guanella Pass. And I did that a couple years ago, and we were there like right at peak time, and it was insanely gorgeous. And that was about a 2 hour drive, I think. It's outside the town of Georgetown. And I'm trying to remember what the other town is that the pass connects to. But yeah, it's basically across the street from Bierstadt.
Yeah, well, depending on which way you come. If you come up 287th near Bailey, I think. Is a town near there?
Yeah, because I think we came up through Bailey, but then came out through Georgetown.
Right. And that's a nice ride. And of course, there's a railroad in the steam railroad in
Yeah.
Georgetown too. If you ever get a chance to take that, but even if you don't get a chance to ride it, there's some you can catch some nice pictures of it. If you get the chance to ride it during the fall colors, that's a great thing to do too. Kevin, what do you got coming up? You got any hikes coming up anytime in the near future?
No, but it's that time where I start to plan for next year. I had my big plans this year derailed because of car repairs and incompetent mechanics that I will not name the brand of.
Uh-oh.
Let's just say I understood fully why some cars are referred to as found on road dead. Um,
Whoops.
or fix or repair daily
Yep.
is another one.
Well, that's not a
Um,
nice thing to say about Chevy. Well, it's not Chevy.
yeah, yeah. There there was one. What it was from The Sopranos. It was Fiat, and and the guy said it's like it fix it again, Tony.
Oh my.
But
Oh, well,
yeah,
I
so
drive I drive a Jeep, and the thing about driving a Jeep is when you drive a Jeep, you become a mechanic.
So yeah, so my major plans for this past summer were derailed because of that, which is frustrating. It's annoying. I all these plans. I took the time off work, but it's fine. The mountains and canyons are still going to be there, so I'm gonna reroute and see what I can get done for next year.
I'm kind of looking at stuff for next year, but I haven't set any plans. I think I need to spend the winter, or actually the next couple of months. You can't wait too long to do these. One of the places that I've been looking at is Pinnacles National Park in California. It's a relatively new national park. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. One of these places, which I kind of like, one of the places that you really got to want to go there. And I'm debating whether to go there on my own or go with a group. I know REI does a hiking trip in there for a few days. And as I found with some places, especially places with limited amenities like this place is, there's no lodge there or anything. If you're going to go there, they have tents that, it's kind of like those, what they call outfitters tents, pretty big tents
Oh, okay.
that house a few people. They have those that you can get there. Sometimes and I found before, like when I did Grand Canyon, it's easier to sign on with the company and pay them to go because of the expediency that they've got the reservations and you don't have to wait 2 years to get a reservation. Pinnacles is not anywhere near as popular as Grand Canyon, so I wouldn't have to wait that long. I may not have to wait at all, but sometimes it's easier to arrange things through them. There are 2 or more hours from the nearest airport to get down there. So I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. There's a group that does trips for photographers, and they're strictly photography related, very small groups, like 6 people, 7 people, 8 people. And there's one that they have to do waterfalls in the Carolinas near the Great Smoky Mountains in the spring. And of course, if you follow me on my social media, I love those kind of pictures. So I'm actually thinking about doing one with those. Kind of expensive. And getting there is a little difficult because you have to fly into a small airport that nobody flies directly to from here, which I'm not surprised. A small airport typically you have to hit an intermediary airport somewhere nearby. And I'm kind of looking at that. That is more of a funds-based kind of a thing. REI trip to Pinnacles National Park is actually pretty affordable. This other trip I want to do is a bit more expensive, but I like the idea. There's only going to be like 6 of us, 7 of us, something like that, and really small group. Just getting there is could be a little problematic. It could be a little expensive. It's one of those that getting there will almost cost half of what it costs for the whole trip. So
Oh yeah.
kind of thing. And we kind of hinted at this a little bit ago, but Kevin's got a project he's working on, and I think this winter we'll start seeing. I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, Kevin,
Cool.
but
Please do.
Kevin's got a project he wants to work on, and I think you'll be hearing hopefully in the winter, maybe coming up pretty soon or right around the first of the year. Kevin, is that a fair estimation? Maybe around the first of the year
Yeah, yeah.
that Kevin will be doing some episodes on here, and he wants to do something a little different. So we're kind of going to experiment. We're going to use this platform to see how they work out before Kevin decides whether he wants to branch out on his own. So you maybe some. So keep an eye on that coming up in the next few months. And I put Kevin on the spot. Sorry, Kevin, didn't mean to do
Oh,
that, but I think it's exciting what Kevin has got planned. And we're going to keep it a little secret, but what Kevin has got planned is very exciting, and I want to hear him. I want to see how that works out, and I'm pretty excited what he's got planned. So
and
stay tuned for that, some of that kind of stuff.
thanks, Bob. And I'm not going to say it yet on the air, but I do have a working title for it.
Mm.
So I'm pretty excited about that too.
Wild West endorsed wisdoms. Probably not even close.
I'm not that wise yet.
Yeah, too many W's. Too much alliteration. You don't want to do that. Well, Kevin, I think if we don't have anything else, I think we'll say goodbye to everybody. And Kevin, thanks again for being on the podcast.
Of course, we'll talk to you later.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast.